To prove that I love you, I swear I don't know how. You'll never know if you don't know
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum in Springfield, Illinois, for a very special Facebook Live event. It is Veterans Day. Of course, we can't express enough our gratitude and appreciation for the men and women who have served in our military over the years. And tonight we celebrate veterans, especially those from the greatest generation, a program I think you're going to really enjoy if you've seen our special guest in the past here at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum. Of course, if you're watching from around the state, around the country, even around the world, please let us know in the comments section where you're watching from tonight. And be sure to comment in the comments section below for that. And of course, if you have some questions, we will have some time for a little Q&A at the end of the conversation tonight. So let's go ahead and get it underway on this very special Veterans Day edition of Facebook Live. We welcome in to the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum our very own Director of the Oral History Program, Dr. Mark DePue. Good evening, Mark.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you all for checking in with us this evening. And as he already said, I think this is going to be a special night. I've got sitting across from me, Vincent Speranza. Good evening, Vince.
Good evening.
So let's a very quick introduction for you, Vince, and then we'll get right to the program. Vince, an Italian family, grew up in Staten Island, was born in Hell's Kitchen. Vince, I think that's where you were born. Did I ever tell you that I was mugged in Hell's Kitchen? Okay, but it's all about you tonight. So anyway, we'll get to that later. Vince decided that the beginning of World War II, he needed to get into it. He joined the infantry, and then he saw an airborne presentation. Some paratroopers jumped, and I believe that was 1943. You can correct me if I got that wrong. And decided that's what you wanted to do. A little bit extra pay, but all those boots and that uniform they were wearing. Ends up being sent overseas and arrived in Europe in November of 1944. So you missed D-Day, you missed the Market Garden campaign, but you were there soon enough to get into Bastogne. And that's where the 101st Airborne made its glory, if you will. You were assigned as a machine gunner, I know, to H Company, 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment, 101st Airborne Division. And you trucked into Bastogne, is that right?
After 5 weeks of airborne training, I made my first jump out of the back of a truck.
There you go. Okay. Vince's story about his World War II experiences is very, very well known, and we'll get into some other ways you can find out more about it. But Vince, we wanted to pick up the story tonight in 2009, 65 years after the battle. And I believe it was in Florida, you encountered somebody there who convinced you that you should go back to Bastogne. And I'm going to hand it over to you and kind of tell that story and how you ended up going back in 2009.
Okay, first let me say this. When I came home from the war, I was 20 years old. I'd been through the wheel. But as a young boy, I remember reading about the World War I guys who, when they came home from the war, shell shock and nightmares and personality changes and beating up their wives and so on. And I said to myself, I looked in the mirror at my mother's house when I came home from the war, and I said, listen, you are not going to be one of those guys who comes home and beats up his kids, and you're going to take all that stuff of cutting people in half with a machine gun and sticking bayonets in people, and you're going to put it in the back of your head, lock the door. You can't forget it, but you can suspend it. And I want to tell you, Mark, that I was very successful at it. I met a nice woman, got married, kids, I became a school teacher, and all of that stuff, the war, I buried. I said, you're no longer a soldier, you're an educator now. It was in 2009 that changed. a woman was waiting on me, serving on me on the store, and she had an accent. And I said, Madame, do I denote a French accent? And she said, no, Belgique. I said, oh, Belgium. She said, yes, do you know Belgium? And I said, yeah, bombs, bullets, and snow. That's what I know about Belgium. And she said, oh, you were there during the war? I said, yeah. She said, with the 101st Airborne Division? I said, yeah. She said, Monsieur, you haven't been back. I said, no. She said, you must go back. The people of Bastogne have never forgotten the 101st Airborne Division. There are monuments to you all over town. There are speeches. Every year, all the men and women in the town put on American uniforms with a Screaming Eagle patch. They reenact the battle. There are ceremonies. She said, you must go back. And my first reaction was, what for? I spent 65 years trying to forget that stuff. Why do I want to go back? And my daughter said, Pop, the one thing, if nothing else, we should go back and visit the cemetery where your guys are. And I said, yeah. Yeah, yes, I should go back one time. And, my wife had been taken away, put permanently in a nursing home. I was an 85-year-old man sitting around waiting to die. But I decided, okay, let's do this one thing. And it changed my life. From an 85-year-old man sitting around waiting to die, I'm now a playboy running around the world. Meeting all kinds of people and my brass and all kinds of adventures and stuff that I went back with the intention of just spending 3 days. My daughter and I were going to spend 3 days there. We knew nobody. We had no contacts. I was just going to rent a taxi and drive out of town and see if maybe I recognized anything and come home. And that'd be the end of it. And I'd put everything back here. It was not to be. The first morning, we were on our way to the bank in Bastogne to exchange our money to euros, and my daughter sees a mannequin in a window of a 101st Airborne guy in uniform with the airborne patch.
Can we get the
And
next
she said,
slide,
Pop,
please?
look. I said, yeah, so? She said, let's go look. Now here's, I'm telling you, my life from there on in, one series of accidental meetings, coincidental events, it just seemed like an unrelated event, all organized to get me to do something that I had not wanted to do. I said, okay. I could have insisted, I'm the boss in my house. I could have insisted, no, let's go to the bank and forget about that. But I didn't. I gave in. We went in there. And it was like a big museum with all kinds of World War II artifacts and stuff. And I said, okay, we've seen that. Let's go. On the way out, I stopped to look at a counter with some German belt buckles and helms. And this big, I later found out, Dutch paratroop officer comes over. He says, perfect English. May I help you, sir? I said, no, I'm just looking on our way out here. I was here during the war. He said, you were here during the war? I said, yeah. He said, with the 101st Airborne Division? I said, yeah. He came around the counter. I thought he was going to attack me. I went to defense mode. He picked me up off the floor. Sir, where have you been? There are so few of you left. We want to honor you. We studied the war and where everybody, and the 101st Airborne Division. He said, who were you with? I said, H Company, 501, Parachute Infantry Regiment. He said, we studied the war. We know where everybody was, where the battles was. I can take you and show you where H Company was dug in on both sides of the road. I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, you and your daughter, get in the car. So we got in the car, and a friend of his, Johnny Bona, a Belgian tank commander, came out, and he drove. Now, I recognized nothing. During the war, of course, everything was covered with snow and so on, and 75 years of growth. I recognized absolutely nothing. But he takes us out to this place, and he says, now, H Company was dug in here, 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 and here, on the other side of the road. Now, you know, they were filled in, but you could see they were foxholes. They were foxholes. And then he looks at me and he says, and that was your foxhole. I said, get out of here. I can understand you knowing where H Company was dug in here, but how the hell do you know that was my foxhole? He said, because your company commander, Captain Stanley, when he turned in his after-action reports, he had, on a piece of cardboard from a K ration, he had a little diagram of where he had put the automatic weapons. You were the only machine gun in the 3rd platoon, right? Yes, sir. The other guy got killed. Okay? This is it. MG, you. Well, at that moment, all that stuff that I had put back here hit me in the face. I even heard the artillery again. I got emotional. My daughter pulled me aside. She said, Marco, listen. My father's seen enough. Let's go back. We'll come back tomorrow or so, but let's go back to town now. And I said, yeah. On the way back to town, I asked the 2 guys if I could take them to lunch. They said, sure. At lunch, I ordered 3 bottles of wine. I said, I don't like the way I'm feeling here. Now we got to change the mood. And, well, you put 3 bottles of wine and 3 old soldiers together, and, you know, we started getting noisy, and we embarrassed the hell out of my daughter. We start telling, and they start telling stories. Johnny Bona tells us about Belgian tanks, and then Marco tells us about the fighting in Bosnia and Afghanistan.
Are these Marco and?
Yeah, that's Marco and that's Johnny Bona.
Okay, go ahead.
And the little one in the middle is me. But when it came my turn, I told them this story. I said, you know, the first day of the battle in Bastogne, we knocked the hell out of them. No matter what they threw at us, frontal attacks, we stopped them. So the second day, they surrounded us, captured the field hospital with all the blankets, beds, medicine, morphine, equipment. They shot the medical personnel. They kept the five of our doctors to serve in their armies. 1 doctor and 1 Belgian nurse escaped and was in the town. For that whole battle, that was our medical team. 1 doctor, 1 Belgian nurse, and only his personal equipment. And they laid siege to the place. And we had, by the way, the temperature had dropped to 0, below 0. Later on, we don't know it then, but 8 below, 10 below, one night 18 below. It was the worst winter that Europe had had in 20 years. And we had no winter clothes, no gloves, no hats, no nothing. But at any rate, the second day, my buddy got hit. His name is Joe Willis. They brought him back. We had no place to put the wounded. The church and the seminary across the street from the church were the only 2 places that still had walls, and the town had been flattened. The Luftwaffe had come in. And the wounded were just thrown on the floor of the church. You know, the movies show you nice cots and nurses and so on. The floor. And we went through the houses and pulled the drapes and curtains and bedspreads, whatever we could find to wrap the wounded in. Those of us that had 2 blankets donated 1 to the wounded. And my sergeant sent me back to the town. We were dug in right outside of town to look for batteries for the radios, the walkie-talkies. While I was there, I went to look for my friend. And I see him laying on the floor of the church. By the way, you know, in the movie they show you all these guys groaning, moaning. Nay, there wasn't a sound in that church. All those guys are all beat up. Nobody's paying attention to them because there's only one doctor. But you didn't hear any whimpering, any moaning, any nothing. They were just sitting there quiet. Some of them laying with curtains wrapped around their neck. It was a bad scene. It was a bad scene. But I, you know, hey, Joe, how you doing? He said, nothing, a couple piece shrapnel in my leg. I'll be out of here tomorrow. You'll be out of here tomorrow? He said, yeah, don't worry about it. I'll be out here. I said, well, that's great, Joe. I got to go back. Anything I can do for you before I leave? He says, yeah, go find me something to drink. I said, where the hell am I going to find you something to drink? We're surrounded and cut off. There's no supplies, nothing coming in here. He said, go look in the taverns. Joe, the taverns are all flat and bumped. I said, go look anyway. You might get lucky. I step out. It's snowing. Hard, not the gentle, kind of hits you, cuts your face. And artillery is dropping in all around the church there, and I'm slopping down the road there looking for a tavern. The first tavern I went in, this story, by the way, has over 2 million trillion hits on the internet. The first tavern I went in, all broken glass, nothing. I walked down the road a little further. The second I went in, had a bar, and when I pulled the beer handle, beer came out. I said, ooh. I looked around for a bottle or a tub or something to put the beer in. There was nothing. I took off my helmet. The same helmet you use in the foxhole, you know. I swished a little snow in it, and I filled it up with beer. I went back to the church. Joe, I got some beer. He said, oh, he sits up, and I'm pouring beer. Hey, give me some of that. 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 I was like an old mother cow there feeding all these guys a mouthful of beer. I ran out. Joe says, go get some more. Jesus Christ, Joe, go get some more. I get down the road again, fill up the helmet. This time when I stepped out the door of the tavern, a shell landed nearby. Concussion knocked me down, and I spilled half of the beer, but I wasn't hurt. So I got up, went back to the church. Only this time, standing in the doorway like this is the regimental surgeon, Major Walkman. You know, I'm a PFC. He said, what the hell you think you're doing, soldier? Sir, bringing aid and comfort to the wounded. He said, you stupid jackass, don't you know I got chest cases and stomach cases, and you give him B, you'll kill him? Get out of here before I have you shot. Yes, sir, yes, sir. And put that helmet on. I was not only freezing now, I was wet and freezing, but I ran like hell back to the foxhole before he changed his mind. I'd be shot. And I dismissed it. One of the incidents that happened during the war. You know how many incidents happened during the war? I forgot all about it. While I was telling this story, Johnny and Marco are going like this. You? You were the GI who brought beer and helmet to the... I said, yeah. You went the helmet full of beer in the church to the wounded guys laying on the floor? I said, yeah. They said, man, don't you know you're famous in Europe? I said, what the hell are you talking about? They said, waiter, come here. Bring us 4 bottles of airborne beer. And the waiter comes back, and he's got a tray with 4 bottles of beer, like this, and 4 little ceramic helmets in the shape of a GI helmet. Says there, and the label on the bottle of beer shows an American paratrooper with a helmet full of beer going like this. They said nobody thought that was a true story. Everybody thought that was just a myth. That's okay. We can't believe it. The guy is really true, and the guy is sitting right in front of us. I said, yeah, maybe I should get a cut on the beer, right? He said, no, well, Vincent, it's a marvel. It's a marvel. When I went home, they gave me 6 bottles of beer. That other slide you had up there.
Yeah.
They gave me 6 bottles of beer to take home. And the Journal Register called me and said, hey, we heard a story about you. Could we come and interview you? I said, yeah. So they come to my house in Auburn, and they had a photographer too. And they wanted the story. I told them the story. And then the photographer took a picture of me with the beer, the one that you saw when you first came in, and they put it in the newspaper. Somebody from the newspaper took it and put it on the internet. Today, although I have 2 Purple Hearts, 2 Bronze Stars, Legion of Honor, the medal, I have 15 million medals, I am more famous for what I did with a helmet full of beer than what I did with my machine gun the whole war. That story just went crazy, and every place I go, I got to tell it. I was at the Pentagon, invited by a general friend of mine, and they were giving me the tour. They said, we'll start with the Secretary of the Army, and then the Chief of Staff, and the Assistant Chief of Staff, and the Sergeant Major, and the Commander. All the way down the line, you'll get to shake hands with all the officers. I said, great. I was in a wheelchair. They wheeled me into the Secretary of the Army, Murphy. He was just appointed by Trump at that time. And he's outside of his office when I get wheeled in, and he says, you, come in here. He said, I heard about you. I said, sir? He said, I heard it from other people, but I want to hear it from you. Tell me the beer story. The Secretary of the Army. Tell me the beer story. Okay. And you know, when I started traveling around, I liked to sing and fool around something, but everybody, hey, Vince, tell the beer story. After a while, I said, you know, listen, I'm not an entertainer. I'm here as a veteran of the battles and so on. I didn't do any singing. They said, yes, you did. You brought beer to the wounded in the middle of a fight and raised the morale of the wounded. At any rate, the story is taken off, and it's all over the place now and so on. And I was on my way to a new career. I started visiting, going to the reunions, the 101st Airborne Association, the 82nd, and visiting Fort Campbell and so on and so on. And everywhere I went, oh yes, decorated veteran, tell us the beer story. Okay, tell the beer story.
Before we get to that though, Vince, I'm going to jump in here because I want to lay a little bit more of the background down, how you and I met. You came out after this trip and after you'd gone out to the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C., and it was in 2010, and you came to our Optimist meeting, and that's where I first found out about you and talking to you. And as I recall, Vince, it took quite a while for me to convince you to actually sit down and tell your story. But since that time, we've had 5 sessions in the original interview back in 2010, and then another session in 2012.
And you promised me a 2-hour session.
Well, but I'm glad that I violated that rule.
When you first asked me about the email, I said, yeah, okay. And you said 2-hour session. I said, yeah, okay, 2 hours. And but then, as a skilled interrogator there, you asked the questions that you brought every damn thing out of it. By the end of the first session, I hadn't even gotten out of high school. They said, you got to come back for 2 more. And there's 2 more. I had just barely gotten into combat. And more, and so the rest of it. But Marcus responsible for launching my career.
But after that, then you got a flood of invitations, I know, just all over the place. And I know that in 2010, must have been after we did our interview, you went back to Europe, and I wanted to give you a chance to tell a couple of stories that a lot of people I don't think have heard about. And this one for pictures, going to Brighton, England. Can you lay out the background for that story? Because I think that's every bit as fascinating as the beer story.
We went overseas in the Queen Mary. It had been converted to a troop ship. And got to England in November and flown to France near the end of November as the 101st Airborne Division was coming out of Market Garden, out of Holland. And the division was supposed to get 90 days of rest, recuperation, replacements, ammunition, food, replenish all the supplies, and half of the weapons that they were supposed to, that they had to leave in Holland when the Germans almost took them over. And so when you're a replacement in an experienced outfit, you are nothing. Nobody talks to you. We expected that. We were told. They said, listen, what do you expect when a combat guy whose buddy just got killed and he sees you? You're going to take his friend's place. You're going to be as good as Louis was. And so, they look at you as nothing. And in fact, in the beginning, you're cannon fodder. They send you out to save one of their own. But we didn't blame them. We understood it. Until you prove yourself in combat, you are nothing. Once you do, then you can't find the envelope that you're in now with all these guys and so on. I must have done very well in my first combat because they nicknamed me Curse and Traverse Speranza. They said, I wasn't aware of it, they said, all you did, we never heard such cursing in our whole lives. We think you invented some new ones. But you lit those 3-second bursts just right. You were mowing them down. The snow turned red. And you're one of the boys. As soon as you proved yourself in combat, then you can't find better buddies. And I went back a couple of times to visit the museum there and so on. And there was a young singer. Her name was Kellyanne Sproul. That's leading up to the story.
There she is.
The one before that. And she was known as the sweetheart of the British Armed Forces. And she sang the World War II song, the old song. And she was very nice. And her mother was her manager and so on. And I'm sitting here with them, and unbeknown to me, the line from her microphone was under my chair as it went out. And so she's sitting there belting the song, and I get up, and without realizing it, I unplugged her microphone. So there she is singing away, and nobody hears anything. Of course, afterward, I apologized and so on, and I took her and her mother to dinner and so on. And they invited me to come to England. So I went to, I did. I went to visit, and they were driving me around, showing me the old places that I mentioned while I was in England. I was here, there, and the other place. And we went by this one place that I sort of got some kind of recognition. I said, was that a tavern there? She says, yes, it still is. She said, it's a very old tavern. It's from World War II. So I looked a little closer and I said, I think this is the tavern where my buddies and I are in town. You know what we're looking for. And people said, not the pub. The pub the old men go to. If you want to meet the ladies, you got to go to the dance halls down below there. So we went down to the dance halls, and oh yes, there was plenty of ladies there. But we ended up the night, 3 guys and only 2 women. So I magnanimously said, go ahead, boys, I'll go back to the tavern and have a drink and wait for you. Well, I went back to the tavern, but they never came back.
We need to
It
see
got
the
late,
picture of the
and
tavern
we
here.
were roaring, drinking, and appeasing the British with drinking their ale with a hot poker in it and so on. And the story, the stories came out later that I was leading them in song that I knew. It's a long way to Tipperary. And about 4 o'clock in the morning, I felt pretty good, but as soon as you step outside into the cold, now you stagger and you can't even walk. And I got jumped on by 3 or 4 guys. They called them young toughs in England. They beat the hell out of me. They took my watch and my pass and my wallet, and that had my pass in it, and left me laying in the alley there. And I woke up a little bit later, I guess, and I didn't know where I was or what I was going to do and so on. It's getting daylight, and I walked out. The path of least resistance was downhill. I walked downhill to a bench, and I sat down on the bench. And I just sit there, I don't have a pass now. As soon as the MPs come around, I'm going to be AWOL. They're going to prick me in, put me in the jail. And I'm just shaking my head, and here comes this old Englishman walking around with a dog. As he walks by and he looks at me, and then he looks again, and he says, I say, Yank, are you all right? I said, no. Considering your guys beat the hell out of me, took my money, my pass, and my watch, and so on, and I don't know how I'm going to get back to the camp. He was horrified. Oh, he said, I'm so sorry. I feel bad. He said, please, come to me. I live right up there. Come to my house. My wife will clean your uniform, and rest you up, and I'll get you back to the camp. So I said, sure, anything to get off the road. I went to the house, and I'm telling you, those people must have used their saved up rations for a month. They put a dinner on there with, what do you call that flaming, whatever it is. It's a flaming dessert with they put whiskey on it and so on. And she cleaned my uniform and everything else. And he took me back in his car to where the trucks picked us up to bring us back to camp. So I didn't get into any trouble. And I thanked them. The next day, I got the sergeant to give me a whole bunch of tea and stuff, and I brought it to their house and so on. And we stayed in touch for a while. But in 2010, I went back, and Kelly Ann Sproul took me to these places again, where I could see the bench where I sat and the tavern, which was still there, still operating. You had a picture, didn't you? And well, then she and I were friends for a long time after that. We met at other times, but that was my reintroduction to England, and I reminded them that one day I saw the best they had to offer and the worst. Those guys that took on an American GI. Now, what you've got up there now, Mark, is something different.
Are you talking about the Gauvers?
Dr. Gauvert.
The next slide here.
These stories have to be a little disjointed. I try to give a little background to how they fit together, but I can't do it. They're different episodes. This one, there was a bombing attack, probably the 3rd day of the battle there in Bastille, and they really finished flattening everything. And I'm walking through the town there, and I see these 4 people standing on the sidewalk, the 2 men and 2 women and a child, 5. They're crying, and they're standing there looking. And I went up to them, and they said, "Look, this was my house," with all of that. I said, a lot of the civilians tried to get out of the town before it was surrounded, but they couldn't get out. So they were stuck in their basements and so on. And so he said, he was a doctor. And I said, listen, I'll help you get some of the debris out of the way. You better get down to that basement. This artillery's going to go on all day. And so they sort of revived a little bit. We went down, we pulled some of the debris out of the way so they could get in the basement. And I gave the men a cigarette and so on, and I had a piece of the chocolate D-bar we used to have. I gave it to the kid. And I said, "Don't worry about it." They said, "The Germans are coming back, aren't they?" So I said, "No, this is the 101st Airborne Division. They will not come back into this town." They said, and they said, "Vincent, where do we go for, can we get water or food? Will the army?" I said, I don't know about that. You go talk to somebody else. But I said to the doctor, I said, "Listen, we could use you." He said, I don't have any instruments." I said, "Well, you go up there. I'm sure that they'll be able to use you." So he went to the church there where our doctor was, and he helped out for the rest of the war. And each day that I was in town, I would go back, and if I talked the sergeant out of a can of beans or something, and one time a can of fruit and some dried peas and stuff, and I'd give them what I could find, and a pack of cigarettes, which they wanted more than almost the food, and so I befriended them, and they were very grateful about it. And at the end of that battle, I never saw them again. And the one incident that stands out is Christmas. Christmas Day, I found some stuff in one of the stores, like necklaces and things there, and I took 2 pieces of parachute cloth, yellow parachute cloth. I wrapped 2 packs of cigarettes each for the 2 men. I found a necklace and the bracelet and thing there for the women, and a coloring book and crayons for the child, Anne Marie. She was 12. And they never got over it. Christmas, the middle of the battle, here comes this GI with his helmet. He's got presents for Christmas. I wished him a Merry Christmas, and I went back. And I never saw them again. This is the museum in Bastogne. And I'm in the museum there. It's, 2012, 13, somewhere in there. And while I'm talking to the Johnny Boner there in the museum and so on, this guy walks in, and he says to me, are you Vincent? I said, yeah. He said, Vincent, who was here during the battle? I said, yeah. He said, I'm Dr. Gauvert Jr. He said, my father and mother, do you have the other picture? That's them. My father and mother were here in Bastogne during the war. And suddenly he starts crying. And he says, my father passed away 11 years ago. He said, but before he died, he told me, go get the blue bag out of the closet drawer here. And I bring him the blue bag, and he said, you see these 2 pieces of parachute cloth? They say, Merry Christmas from Vincent. He said, you must find Vincent. He said, all the stories I told you about during the war, that's GI that helped us and so on, this is who it was. He said, I have not been able to locate him, to thank him once again for our family that we made it through the war. But he said, I want you to be sure to do it. And I'm overcome already. And then he pulls out the 2 pieces of yellow parachute cloth that say, Merry Christmas from Vincent. And he hugs me, and I'm an old man now. Emotionalism is getting too much, but it was an episode that it touches the heart, and you can't believe that. One of the reasons I started going back to all these, the sincerity of the people there when they look at you in the eye and thank you for what you did. Maybe the governments didn't get along well, but the people there have never forgotten the Americans and what the American soldiers did during World War II to preserve some semblance of civilization there when the war was over. And I kept going back for more when I realized how much it meant to them. And everyone will take a picture with you and so on. What have you got there now?
Well, I know that
Well,
you've always gone back for D-Day and Market Garden and the Battle of the Bulge every single year, right?
Let me read you a poem that I wrote about the Battle of the Bulge, my first day in combat. I said, by the way, I've never written a poem in my life. Just one day when I'm getting ready to make a speech, as I was thinking about it the night before, some of the things, phrases started rhyming in my head, and I said, well, I sat down at the thing then. It was December of 1944, the 18th to be exact, when the hungry, tired soldiers did pour from off the trucks with their packs and told to dig a hole in the frozen ground. And it was cold, cold, cold. The wind blew through their summer clothes and feet froze through and through. But these were paratroopers all and given a job to do. No weather was going to stop these boys. And we waited and waited and waited. We checked and checked and checked our guns. Our fingers were stiff and sore. The enemy was near, we knew. Get ready, sight that bore, put a round in the chamber, and click it home. And we stamped and stamped and stamped our feet. The experienced calmly lit a butt and cupped it in their hand. The young kid with the machine gun just hoped that he could stand. They all gave him the thumbs up. You'll make it, little man. And you force a smile while your mouth runs dry. The fog and the mist begin to rise. Daylight comes at last. Stirrings from the other side. And artillery comes whizzing past. Not yet, not yet, not yet, said the lieutenant. And our fingers were sticking to the triggers. And then the sound we dreaded most, the clank of treads and wheel, the 88 grinds to a halt, and the tanks belch red-hot steel. And fear begins to clutch the heart, and you shiver, but you blame the cold. The enemy starts across the field. White snow capes frustrate our aim. Lieutenant, goddammit, they're coming on. Are we just playing a game? Not yet, not yet, not yet, says he. And the wind blows swirls and swirls of snow. The machine gun kid hears not the din, waiting only for word or plan. His thoughts exploding again and again. Would the kid become a man? He sets his sights at 400 yards and squints through the peephole. And the figures get larger as they come on and on. Now, the command, hoarsely through the noise. My gun erupts. I grin and shout and curse, traverse and curse. My fear is gone, replaced by joy as I watch the figures fall. Joy? I don't know. The snow turns red with blood, and the enemy falters, stops, and turns back. No victory cries or shouts of glee as we all turn around and view the bodies of our boys lying upon the ground. Oh, the cost of that day's work lies heavily on the brow. The mighty Airborne 101 is less in numbers now, but we stopped them cold, though odds of 7-1, no Nazi boot ever entered Bastogne. And the machine gun kid had indeed become a man. We the living seek not the glory, only realization of our terrible losses. Save your honor, prayers, and praise for brave men neath rows of crosses. Respectfully submitted.
Vince, I suspect that put all this out of your mind until 2009, and then your comrades would be so proud of the way you're carrying on their tradition and bringing their memories to life again.
Unfortunately, when you're an old man, you don't have the control you used to have, you know. Every time. But they asked me about Memorial Day, Veterans Day today. Well, what are your feelings? In fact, it's supposed to be on, I did a clip for Martha McCallum, Fox News there. What do you think about on Veterans Day? Happy Veterans Day. I said, no. Veterans Day brings on a sadness to me. A sadness that always brings me back to those views, those scenes of so much death and destruction, and it doesn't seem to be going any better today, and that we thought at the end of World War II, man, we've finally done it now. We've stopped the dictators. The world is uniting in the United Nations. The United States is big and powerful and ready to help the whole world get back on its feet, which it did. And maybe really there's going to be a little peace on earth. And of course, not a year afterwards, the communists started, and it's all going downhill. And you wonder, I wonder today, is it ever going to change? Or, as Jefferson said, the tree of liberty needs to be watered by blood every generation. I hope not, but you know, we've had some wars, but they're not real big wars. But if the big one comes, I hope somebody's still around to celebrate Veterans Day. At any rate,
let me turn the direction here.
I started being invited to the army camps.
Yeah, and I wanted to give you an opportunity because we're going to run out of time here, even though nobody's ready to kick you off. That's the stage for sure. But I wanted you to tell your efforts to make a solo parachute jump and how that has worked out for you.
Mm-hmm. I was 80 years old, and I said, yeah, I can't live much longer than 80. My parents died in their 70s, and that. I said, you know, before I die, I would like to make it one more jump. And I started thinking about it and asking around and thinking about it. And then one day at a 101st Airborne Association meeting, there's a sign, there'll be a jump today. And I said, for anybody? They said, I don't know. It doesn't say anything special. Go look. So I went down and talked to the guys in charge. I said, can anybody sign it? They said, yeah, but you have to pass the test. I said, what are the tests? They said, can you do 3 push-ups? I did 10. Can you climb a rope L-shaped with at least 5 feet? I climbed 10. Can you do a PLF? Parachute landing fall. I said, get out of the way. All the young kids, they were all gathered around waiting for the old grayhead to make a fool of himself. I did a PLF that everybody had to clap. They all clapped. The jump master said, this man's ready to jump. My dream was coming true. I'm going to make a static line jump, just like I did when I was an 18-year-old kid. And we get to the airport. I have my parachute. I have my jump position. And we're all sitting there waiting. The loudspeaker, no jump today. The ceiling is too low. Oh, God. But come back tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, everything is going to be okay. The weather's right. There will be a jump tomorrow morning. That night, my jump master gets a phone call. Everybody can jump tomorrow except Speranza. He's over 80. I just was flabbergasted. Where the hell do you come up with a figure like that? I passed all the tests better than the young kids. And I wasn't much over 80. I was 89. But that should not make any difference. The tests are designed to see, can you make a jump? Well, to make a long story short, they cut me out. I could not jump that day. They offered me a tandem jump. I said, get out of here. That's not a jump. I said, a tandem jump, you're a message on a passenger pigeon's leg going out the door. And they said, well, that's all. I had to eat those words because that's all I could get. Later on, I got a tandem jump. But I want to read you a poem that I wrote after I got turned down out of that jump. It's called An Old Paratrooper's Lament. And I smiled and laughed at myself afterwards saying, what has come of the American paratrooper when he gets even with somebody by writing a poem? Maybe. I thought I had it. Here. No, that's not the one. Maybe I don't have it. I guess not.
So you're not able to find that, Vince?
Huh?
You're not able to find that? Do you have another one you can read, or?
Oh, it's not in the book. There's only the first 3 in the book. Well,
you know what this means if you can't find it, Vince. You're going to have to come back another time.
Well, at any rate.
Tell us about this picture that we see over here on the...
All right, I am claiming the world's first selfie. Because there was no such thing, and yet that is in 1945. What happened was, at the end of the war, they broke up the 101st Airborne Division. Right? The war was over in May. In June, don't ask me what the politics of the world was. All of a sudden, they said the 101st Airborne Division is now being abolished, and they took all the high point men from the 82nd and the 101st. They sent them home. They put the young kids in the 82nd Airborne, and they said that we are going to have a practice jump. And we said, practice? What the hell for? The war's over. With full equipment. What they had decided to do was they were going to fly us from France to Panama to Saipan for the invasion of Japan. You know, that war looked like it was going to last another 3 years. The closer we pushed the Japanese back to their home island, the tougher they got. And we just couldn't believe it. We'd never survive another combat. We said, don't you have enough guys there already? With what else? You can take us from here and bring us over there to fight. And I realized my mother really didn't have any pictures of me since I'd been overseas. So I decided I would take some pictures to send her so that she'd have something. I'm sure I'm going to get killed in the Pacific. And I had, you know, the little box cameras, the kind you have to roll the film. And, you know, against the rules, of course, I jumped with the camera. And as soon as I got out of the plane and the chute opened, I took a picture of the guys above me, picture of the guys below me, and then just for the hell of it, I turned the camera like this and I went, that's me in the air coming down. And I don't know of anybody who has taken a selfie like that since then, so I claim the world's first selfie, 1945.
How many tandem jumps have you made since you got started?
Three. I made one in Holland with the round canopy parachute unit, and I made one with Mike Elliott, who was a former Golden Knights out of Fort Bragg, and the last one I made with the Golden Knights, you saw. Well, that one, that's the Fort Bragg one. But in each case, I ate my words about a tandem jump. It is a thrilling thing. It's the same, you know, except that instead of jumping at 900 feet, and as soon as you shoot them, you hit the ground, you're up 10, 12,000 feet, and you sail down, and you can see the ground and everything, and of course, you come in cushioned by the other guy who's jumping with you, and he takes all the shocks. And for you, it's just one pleasant thrill, and I will make one every chance I get.
Well, that sure looks like you had fun after you landed on the ground, and I was watching the whole the video of you coming down. It looked like you had a beautiful view.
Oh man, it was beautiful. A tandem jump is a very nice thing, and they ask me, how do you feel? It's always the same. You don't get used to parachute jumping. You don't get used to it. Every one is a wonderful thrill. They said to me, which part of the jump do you like the best? I said, going out the door. When you're going out the door, if you go out the door, well, you've met the first and most important challenge. Only one or two things can happen. You're going to smash yourself into a million pieces, or your chute's going to open and you're going to have a nice descent. Once you're willing to do that, hey man, everything else is fun. And I feel the same way. When you experience it for the first time, it's just as good the 10th time or the 12th time.
Well, since you were there in 2009, I think you will agree that your life has transformed in ways you couldn't even imagine, and you've become something of a celebrity. So I've got this next picture right here. I got to tell you that last year for the 75th anniversary of D-Day, I personally was not surprised when I got my Wall Street Journal in the morning on the 7th and looked to see your picture right on the front page.
Yeah. Well, you know, I thank God that I'm still able to move around enough to try. You can't know about what this virus has done to me. All my things are canceled. I can't go here, I can't go there. 2 in October, 3 in November. My December ones are all canceled. I may not even get to Bastogne this year. And I've been to Bastogne every year since 2009. But, yeah.
I think what I'd like to do here then, Vince, is play a video. And the video illustrates just how much you are now embraced by the military community across the world. And then we're going to open up to the audience and let them ask you some questions. And you know what video I'm going to go here, so let's go ahead and bring that on up. You're going to have to click it again. There we go.
Is everybody happy? Cried the sergeant looking up. Our hero bravely answered yes, and then they stood him up. He jumped right out into the blast, his static line unhooked. He ain't gonna jump no more. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more. Now there was blood upon the risers, there were brains upon the chute. Intestines were a-hanging from his paratroop chute. They picked him up, still in the chute, and poured him from his boots. He ain't gonna jump no more. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory,
I had the whole
glory,
class
what
at
a
West
hell of a
Point
way to
singing.
die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more. Now the letter they sent home to his wife and baby son. Madam, we regret to say your trooper's life is done. But hold your head up high, his name is written in the sky. He ain't gonna jump no more. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more. Now the baby son grew up and said, a trooper's life for me. A jumper like my daddy was is all I wanna be. I only hope that I can jump just half as well as he. He ain't gonna jump no more. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more. Now they sent him to Afghanistan and then into Iraq. The bullet that came speeding out went deep into his back. He hit the ground, but his grenade found enemy on track. He ain't gonna jump no more. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more.
Vince, it's pretty
Let me-
obvious
let
going
me
through there.
Just say one thing about that song. I don't know when I started singing it. It was after I started going back to Europe and so on. But I only remembered the first two stanzas. Now, I was too stupid to know that you could get on the internet and find the lyrics to anything, but so I just made up three of my own. I added three stanzas to it. Now, I'm not singing it for at an entertainment. My buddies and I, when we're sitting around talking, fooling around, I sing this song. And people take a video clip and they put it on YouTube. Now, I don't know that they're doing that, but at any rate, it starts to go around. And about a year later, I'm in Normandy with a bunch of guys and so on and so on, and these people come up and they said, you're not singing that song, right? That's not the Blood on the Rises song. I said, I know. I said, I couldn't remember more than the first 2 stanzas, so I made up 3 of my own. They said, yeah. So I said, oh, well, you know, I'll start singing the official version. All my friends said, nah, we like your version better. The original Blood on the Rises makes the guy a damn fool. You make him a hero. We like your... So I started singing. Now, I don't know if I've broken any rules or anything, but, you know, I'm not selling the song. It's just when people and I get together, they love to hear that, so we sing my version of it. And I guess someday I'll get arrested for plagiarism or something, but...
no one's going to have the
I'm
guts
innocent.
to arrest you, Vince.
I meant no harm to anybody, and I certainly am not trying to commercialize it.
But this video, what it shows, to me at least, is that everywhere you go, you are bringing a little bit of joy and an awful lot of pride to these young men and women who are wearing the uniform today, and that's something to be proud of. And I think as we get ready to turn over to the audience, can you hold up a copy of your book so you can talk about that a little bit?
Oh, I was telling this gentleman here, for years, my family was after me, Pop, you should write a book. You should write a book. I said, get out of here. What makes you think I can write a book? You've got to have talent to write a book. There are people that go to college for 4 years to learn how to write a book. And I said, I don't have that kind of talent. And I put them off for years that way. Finally, one year, when I was 89 years old, my daughter said, listen, Pop, when you talk to people and you tell them stories, they all sit there fascinated. They really listen to what you have to say. Just tell a story. Well, that clicked in here immediately. Of course, I don't have to invent anything or make up anything. I just sit down and tell my story. And at that time, there was a new computer application that called Dragon Naturally Speaking. You talk and the computer types it out. Well, you know, if I had to type it, it would have never got done. But all I had to do was sit there, tell my story, and the computer printed it all out. I divided it into chapters and all that. How long did you struggle with rewrites and editing and this? 3 weeks. Wrote this book in 3 weeks. 6 days a week. I took Sundays off. 4 hours every morning, Monday through Saturday. And 3 weeks later, I had a book, and I divided it into chapters, and just went over it one time. By the way, no editing, no changing, anything. Whatever the first thing was, that was it, and that's what came out. And I used to laugh at myself. Who the hell do you think you're going to read a book like that? And I sent it to a publisher. They said, how long did you pound the pavement looking for a publisher to first time out, unknown author, and, an old man, an 89-year-old man. The first publisher I sent it to, Deeds Publishing Company out of Atlanta, I got a phone call. Said, Mr. Speranza, yes, I want to publish your book, but I've only read the first 2 chapters. Wait till I finish reading the rest of the book and I'll send you a contract. And he did. He said, no, he said, you know, you could expect to sell 180, 200 books a year. That kind of, first year we sold 1,500. The second year, 1,400. Third year, 1,600. And right now it's on, Amazon.com and these other people and so on and so on. And I sell them out of my home too as well. And it won a prize, the Indie Book Awards out of New York, the Harvard Book Club. So an 89-year-old can still write a book.
Okay, let's turn it over to the audience. And Joe, I'm sure you got a couple questions that have been sent in.
Well, actually, it would be great if we had some questions at this point. Those of you watching, if you have a question for Vince, please post them in the comments. But we've had more than a number of comments as opposed to questions. Basically, Vince, thanking you for your service, thanking you for bringing history to life. In fact, one of the best comments that we got earlier tonight, as you were telling some of the stories, from Susan in Sherman, said, Vince is amazing. He makes some of the scenes in Band of Brothers even more vivid, and that is quite a statement.
Do we have any questions from the small group we got here?
Let me give a moment or two for some folks if they have a question to chime in from our audience watching around the state, around the country. But again, just lots of comments, several people commenting on the great Loving the Beer story, the fabulous and beautiful poem that you read. So again, thank you for that. And we do have, as you mentioned, Mark, a very small in-person audience of invited friends and family of Vince and Dr. DePue. Is there anyone here in our audience that would like to ask a question of Vince before we wrap it up?
Well, you know, I make my living asking questions.
Yes.
Vince, in 2009, when you first went back to Bastogne, could have imagined what has happened to your life after that?
Absolutely not. I honestly saw myself as an 85, and 85, hell, that's old enough. A lot of people don't make it to 75. And I didn't expect to make it to 75. I said, my wife is gone, I'm alone, there's nothing to do. That's enough. I wouldn't do anything foolish, but I was an old man sitting around downhill. I'd done my thing, by the way. I was not ashamed of my life. I felt successful and so on, as a school teacher and so on. And the accidental meeting with that lady who told me about the celebrations in Bastogne changed my life completely. I am now, 85 on the way down. All of a sudden, I'm 95 now. No, I can't even wrap my head around that number. 95, what the hell is that?
We do have a question for you, Vince. Patrick and Rebecca want to know, you had mentioned the different medals that you've received. They wanted to know, how did you earn your Purple Heart?
It's not a question of earning it. January 5, we had broken out of Bastogne, and that was in December, January 1, 2. January 2nd, the 501 had to go into the Beaujac's woods to clean out the Germans there who were now retreating, going back to Germany. And my company, H Company, had to go across an open field. There was snow all over the place, of course. And the snow slows you down. If you make a dash across an open field, you got a chance. But an open field that's open to them too, on the way over a mortar attack. And you hate mortar attacks more than everything, more than artillery. You can hear it, and you got a second or two to move. Mortars are silent. You don't hear it until the first shell drops. And then it's a pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. A good German mortar squad could keep 16 shells in the air at one time, and you don't hear a thing until they start exploding in that pattern. Anybody in the area is going to get it, and I was one of those. I got it. And I didn't think I got it bad. Pieces of shrapnel were on one side, but a piece had gone under my eye, and when they pulled me back, they thought it might be touching the brain, so they flew me to England, to a British hospital, and it wasn't. It wasn't touching it. They pulled it out, no problem. I only stayed in the hospital 6 days. Oh, and then they gave us, if you're a wounded person during the one in the hospital, when you get out, before you have to report to your unit, they give you 7 days recuperation leave. Any place in the United Kingdom. But, oh, by the way, am I going over too much now?
Well, I'm afraid you're going to tell that one joke.
All right.
I don't want you to go there. I think that might be a little bit risque for this audience.
The next day, I'm in the hospital. I'm ready to be discharged the next day. And the nurses there, you know, the British nurses were so good. And we used to fool around, pinch their bottoms and so on. They'd move out of range. And she smiled at me and she said, listen, she said, you know, there's another one of you naughty paratroopers on the 2nd floor. I said, no kidding. She said, yeah. I said, do you know his name? She said, Joe. I said, not Joe Willis. She said, yeah, Joe Willis from Florida. I said, Joe. I said, can I go see him? She said, no. As soon as she went down the hall, I went to see him. Joe, what the hell? He said, the next day, right after you got hit, I got hit. He said, and he said, hey. He said, you know, he said, when we get out of here, they're going to give us 7 days recuperation leave. And, you know, the war's still on. We're going back to the war. We're going to do it right, man. He said, we'll go to Scotland. I said, oh, that's great. He said, when do you get out? I said, tomorrow. He said, no, I don't get out till Thursday. You go back and tell them you're still sick. I went back. I said, my hip's still, the nurse starts laughing. She says, I know, you can't get out till your buddy gets out Thursday, right? And I said, yeah. She said, don't worry, the doctors will cooperate. It's in the book. I don't have time to tell it tonight. I'd like to tell it, but...
Well, I got to give them a teaser to check out our website and to listen to the whole interview. So,
okay. Well, when we left Scotland, the ladies were saying, "Oh, Vincent, Scotland will never be the same without you naughty paratroopers." We managed to get our hands. But by the way, you know, only officers got a liquor ration. When Joe and I got to take our recuperation leave there, we wanted to find something to drink. You could not buy a bottle anyplace. They'll sell you a drink at the bar, but they won't sell you a bottle. We offered them double. No. We offered them triple. No. I will lose my license. I'll never be better. Blah, 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 blah. And so finally, the last guy says to us, listen, laddies, he says, you know, the Johnny Walker factory is right down on the River Clyde and in Edinburgh. And we said, the Johnny Walker factory? Scotch, right? He said, yeah. He said, go at night with the night watchman. You might get lucky. Well, we put a whole bunch of cartons of cigarettes. You know, we'd gotten a lot of cigarettes on our leave. And we went down to and here comes the old Scott, you know, black watch with the skirt there. Before we even got to him, he said, laddies, he said, I know what you're after, but I cannot help you. He said, it's all rationed. We said, oh, we know, but we heard you were a combat man. You were in North Africa, and we just want to talk. We put 2 cartons of cigarettes on the table. He looked, he said, look, he said, you're tempting me. He said, but I cannot do it. Each box is numbered, and it's on a manifest, and we cannot sell it. I said, yeah, but you know, we put 2 more cartons of cigarettes on the table. And he says, we thought maybe you could find a broken box. And he said, no, the last carton of cigarettes I put on the table was Chesterfield. And he looked at that and he said, Chesterfield, my favorite cigarette. Let me see what I can do. And he goes in and he comes out with a whole box of Johnny Walker, 12 bottles. And he opens the box to take a bottle out. We said, oh, you don't have to bother. We'll open it. We put the rest of our cigarettes on the table, took the box, and took off. We were the kings of Scotland for the next 5 days. Everywhere we went, all we had to do was put a bottle of Johnny Walker on the table, and all eyes, the ladies too, you like to, they come running. And then there's a story of a young Scot who's, I looked under his skirt and we had a great time, and when we left the hospital, we were supposed to go to a replacement depot, and replacement depot does not have to send you back to your own outfit. They can send you any place. The doctors there could say, no, you're too bad shape, go home, and so on. And we said, we're not having any of that. We're not going to any replacement depot. We hitched a ride with the 8th Air Force from London to France. And we asked about where the 101st Airborne was, and they said, well, they're on the checkboard over there. So we found a Jeep nobody wanted, and we took and drove out and rejoined our outfit in time for the rest of the war. But our sojourn in Scotland gave us weeks to talk about it to the guys. We had such fun, and we were. Well, the whole story's in the book.
Yeah. And Vince, we have a couple of more quick questions or comments. One person in particular here, Hugh, says, I understand Vince often has a general as an aide. Can this be true? I guess they appreciate that an enlisted man has a general as an aide.
That apparently when you go to all these different functions and events, there's a general who is acting as your aide.
Oh. I was a school teacher. I taught history in New York City, high schools. And I got an email one time. This was 2004. I'm already retired. I'm in Illinois instead of New York and so on. And said, Ms. Speranza, we're having your history class of 1964 is having a reunion, and we want you to come. We'll buy you. I said, no, I got family there. I'll buy my own ticket. I'll take care of it. Yes, I would like very much to come. Now, here are these kids that I knew at age 18. That's when I left them. They are now all 58 years old. It was the 40th reunion. They're senior citizens. And I go to there now, and these kids are, Miss Speranza, remember me? I was in your class. I said, yeah, give me a hint. It's been 40 years. But one guy that comes up to me says, Miss Speranza, remember me? Buzz Altshuler, I was in your history class. I said, remind me, Buzz. He said, you remember when you did World War II in the history course, you brought in that big army trunk with all the German gas masks and helmets and Nazi banners and so on. I said, oh yeah, I did that in all the classes. He said, well, man, he said, you inspired me. He said, when I graduated, I went to West Point. And he said, I graduated lieutenant, and then I joined your old outfit, the 101st Airborne Division, in Vietnam. He said, I did 2 tours, and got hit in the head, and promoted to captain. And I said, oh, well, that's great, Buzz. I said, what are you doing now? He said, I'm still in. And I said, at 58 years? I said, where are you? He said, Fort Bragg. I said, well, what do you do there? He said, I'm the commanding general. And I want you to come out and talk to my young troopers and so on and so on and so on. I did. I went out there and we talked to all the kids and so on and so on. When I got finished, he said, he still calls me Mr. Speranza. Mr. Speranza, are you going to Bastogne? I said, yeah. He said, may I accompany you as your aide-de-camp? I said, a private with a general for his aide-de-camp. I said, we're going to be the odd couple. He did. We went to Bastogne. He came. My aide-de-camp, every place we went. I tried to get him to wear his general stars, but he wouldn't do it. Or he didn't have them with him. So, but whatever the story was, we were really the odd couple. The private with the general as an aide-de-camp. And by the way, what a wonderful guy he is, General Altshuler. We visited, so he came to my 90th birthday party. And he and his wife are fans of mine on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, and I got a letter from Facebook a couple of, well, more than probably a year back. Miss Speranza, you can't have any more. You know, I used to, anybody asked for friendship, I just said conferring, yeah. And they said, you can't have any more. You got 5,000, and that's the limit. And I didn't know I had 5,000, and I didn't know that there was any limit. I said, okay, that's the story. But some people drop off, so every once in a while I can still put a friend on, but there's a limitation. And that's the story of my former student, General, who came to Boston with me as my aide-de-camp.
Wow. And one last question, Jeff wants to know, did you end up going to you had mentioned about doing your jump as they were getting ready to go to the Pacific Theater. Did you actually end up in the Pacific Theater before the end of the war?
Wants to know, after that jump you made in France in 1945, did you and your unit get to the Pacific?
No, that was in July that happened, that jump. And in August, the atomic bomb hit, and that was the end of the war, and so they canceled the plans for sending us overseas to the Japanese war.
And you and about 10 million other GIs were overjoyed with the fact that the war was over.
Ecstatic.
And Vince, I just have to ask one last question. You told the story of how the beer came about, but because you're probably like me a little bit, you enjoy a good beer every now and then. How is Airborne beer? Is it pretty good?
Yeah, it's a lager, a dark beer, but I'm not really a beer drinker. I'm a Scotch drinker. But
well, you have to have something to chase the beer with, I guess.
Whenever I drink one, other people who are friends of mine who are connoisseurs with the beer, they say, yeah, it's a real good beer.
Well, I'll have to try that again. Again, the book is Nuts, a 101st Airborne Division machine gunner at Bastogne. It's available, as Vince mentioned, in Amazon and all the other usual places you can buy books. And from the comments, Vince, I think we sold a few of them tonight for you. So
okay.
You're welcome. But let's hear it again. Vince Speranza, ladies and gentlemen, for our in-house audience.
Thank you.
As always, Mark DePue, thank you for a wonderful job. And Vince, again, thank you for the wonderful stories and the wonderful opportunity to share them with our audience worldwide on Facebook Live. I'm Joe Crane from the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum. We thank you for tuning in. A few people have also asked if this is available to watch afterwards. In a few minutes, Facebook will put this out and be available to watch as often as you want. What I will add there is that the first couple of minutes didn't get into the storytelling, but first couple of minutes there was a little audio glitch, but we will have another version that is crisp and clean audio that will be available on our YouTube page for the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum very shortly.
And before you turn it over,
yes,
mention our webpage where you can find like 11 hours of Vince telling these stories.
Yes, it is oralhistory.illinois.gov, and I think we'll bring that up on screen to let everybody see that as we finish up. Again, thank you to Vince for joining us tonight, and for all of you who have served in our military over the years, we thank you again for your service. Hope to see you again here live on Facebook from the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum in Springfield, Illinois.